Hello, everybody. We have two questions prepared by our hosts, and when I read this question, I thought that they are quite provocative, not to say naive, especially the first one, but maybe that would be a good starting point for our discussion. So here comes the first question. You are managing on a daily basis a Polish biopharmaceutical company with a lot of experience and hands-on knowledge about how to do that. The question is, are, in your opinion, Polish biopharmaceutical companies able to operate on a global market, in a global scale? Is it possible, or that's so obvious and so naive that there is even nothing to answer and nothing to discuss?
Well, I think there's no such a thing as something impossible. So the first answer would be yes, it's possible, but I think we need to be a little bit more realistic in that approach, because we need to understand where we are today as a Polish biotechnology industry. And at the end of the day, what does it mean there is something like Polish biotechnology industry? Whether this is driven by the ownership structure, whether this is driven by the capital, by the employees' passports, or whatever. And this definition is not very sharp, and I think it even not necessarily should be sharp, because the knowledge is transferring across the borders. People are moving from one place to another, and at the end of the day, we are all working to have a better services, better products. I personally don't care too much whether the people working in the company are Polish origin, not Polish origin, as long as they contribute to something bigger. So with that in mind, I think we could consider the companies operating in Poland, building their know-how here, paying their taxes here, giving the jobs here, should be the companies that could be successful on the global scale too, one day in the future. Now, here's the truth element coming to this discussion, because if I take all Polish biotech companies together, it's not even 1 billion zloty of revenue.
Yep.
So the cannons are not so big for this battle, and we need probably to, win small battle after small battle and move forward gradually, and not say to ourselves that we will win everything in 1 year, 5 years, or something like that.
But okay, if the cannons we have are not big enough, if on this global playground we need to play with companies like Pfizer, Merck, AstraZeneca, Novartis, what battlefields should we choose? I mean, I can't see any chance because of the lack of finance, lack of capital, lack of real experience. I don't see any chance for example, in a predictable future that a Polish company would research, would discover, develop, and put to the market an original drug. That's simply not realistic. This is not the battlefield for us. What should be the battlefields?
Well, yes and no. Let's look on that from a different perspective. If we look on all these companies that you mentioned, all of them are currently having their venture operations, venture funds, looking for new businesses. So a lot of new development is being moved to these companies from outside, which is a new dynamics. We haven't seen it a few decades ago, definitely. Second thing, there is a lot of interesting startups, interesting projects that were developing great ideas. If we look on the, let's say, global list of the most valuable companies today, most of them, if not all of them, were not even present on the market 20, 30 years ago. So we are observing a big opportunities right now in the growth of the companies that were coming from, let's say, from nowhere, not necessarily being limited with financial resources, which is the new dimension. And I think that is offering the companies with the good ideas, with the right approach, and tremendous opportunity that was not the case anywhere in the history of mankind, I think. So that's one thing. I could imagine these companies being partners, efficient partners of these big multinationals, because at a certain point this kind of collaboration could be beneficial for both parties. Second thing, as we speak about that, there is a natural question, what kind of people we need here to be able to drive that growth and drive that cooperation. And here we come to the point which is not so expensive as doing the discovery of new molecule or globally registering a new drug, which is huge cost. We talk here about creating an environment where people could move in here, work, find something, bring to a certain level, which for that reason, I think Poland could offer a lot. And when I talk to people in Western Europe, for example, in the age, let's say from postgraduates down to 35, 40 years of age, a lot of them is very much willing to move here. So there is something that we are offering in Poland that could be attractive. And then later on, I think this could be one step of natural growth and natural expansion.
Okay, I need to ask the question from my perspective. Sorry about that. So I'm managing a research institute. Also, my background is a kind of academic background. If we expect you to be a global player in a realistic perspective, what kind of support the institutions I'm coming from, the research institutes or Polish academia, what kind of support and environment we should create to make you capable of being present on a global scale, what we need to deliver?
Let me answer that way. At the same time, Bioton is producing insulin, so we are, let's say, in the daily operation of analyzing things, doing research, doing tests, etc. But I could imagine a lot of companies that are starting business with a great idea that do not have that capacity. And what then? They are either stop, or they could come to you and ask for this analytical research service that you can develop together. So I think in the environment of startups, the companies like yours probably could offer a lot of help and a lot of services that are very much needed for this kind of companies. The startups, let's say, ideas-based companies. Even for more established companies, it's never like you can do all the research by yourself, unless you're really big. So I think there is a huge opportunity for the companies like yours to offer to these startups or smaller companies, smaller businesses.
Well, I'm sorry, but I don't like to be too gentle, so now a little bit more provocative question. Are you satisfied with the support you are getting right now from publicly founded institutions, broadly speaking?
Not yet, but I think...
Why not?
I think it's a cultural shift that we are observing right now. So from one side, I see when you talk to government officials, everybody is very much trying to help this process. But later on, a part of directional decisions, you always have a question of entire infrastructure, people being able to deliver these promises, etc., which sometimes is the case, sometimes is not. But I think this doesn't mean we cannot be successful on that way. And I think this is also a role of companies like ours, where we could explain where exactly are our needs. Because to be honest, I often see that we are resigning from some cooperations or some projects because we are stepping back right after the first obstacle. And I think we should meet together, discuss, explain the positions. People should understand what we need. And I think usually you can get to the point where you can achieve something together.
And the second question we have been asked to ask is whether is it possible that Polish R&D sector, especially biotech R&D, can provide value, can deliver a value to the global companies? Can Polish R&D sector be somehow used, if this is the right word, by global companies? Do we have anything that we can realistically offer?
if we have that something that your potential customer is looking for, then yes. But I think, it's like everywhere in life, nothing is given for free. So if you have, nothing is given just for the fact that you are here or there in some particular place. So if you can prove that you are offering something better, then why not? Today is maybe not that much the case, because I think it's also a question of building some kind of credibility of the society in here, the companies, the research centers, all this community. If this credibility is built, then I think there will be also a space for that.
Is it possible to identify, just for the purpose of that discussion, one single factor we need to focus on to build that R&D credibility on a global scale?
Well, let's divide this to two levels. One is this global scale story, one is developing R&D skills. R&D is more and more intellectual potential, and if someone has this intellectual potential and can do something, then I believe, whether this is Poland or not, could offer that very effectively. The other question is scaling up, and this is obviously more difficult, because if you don't have a global scale, then it's more difficult to be effective, and you can eventually end up with appetite of doing something bigger, but not having enough fuel to get there. So I think this is a perfect place for some kind of cooperation. And even looking on these startups that I mentioned earlier, a lot of them would never be able to go for a global expansion, but a lot of them established some partnerships because they were trustworthy partners of these big companies. If that wouldn't be the case, we would not see the big corporations looking for this kind of partnerships, which is the case today.
Thank you. Well, my personal conclusion would be that quite often when I participate in discussions about biotechnological industry development in Poland, I have the feeling that we talk about big dreams, big ideas, great revenues, being a player on a global map, whereas I think we need a much more realistic perspective, which doesn't mean that wouldn't be ambitious perspective, but definitely more realistic. And I think that thanks to this conversation, we have a kind of a feeling of this really realistic and, by the same token, ambitious perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you.